Greetings everyone and welcome to this guitar lesson. Today we'll be talking about some introductory ways to improvise over a 2-5-1 jazz progression. This progression is very common in jazz standards and I hope that you find this information useful. So today we'll be working out of the key of C major, as it's the simplest key with no sharp or flat notes. I'd like to begin with the C major scale a little bit higher up on the neck to give you some access to some higher melody notes. Let's begin. It's on the 10th fret of the D string. One more time, a little bit slowly. I'll include a tab to help you follow along. Using some chromatic notes to add a little bit of color to our C major scale. So all that means is adding a note that maybe wouldn't otherwise be there in the scale in between one note and another, just to add a little bit more flavor and keep it from being too boring. Here's some chromatic notes you can throw in. Might sound a little bit ugly right now, but it's going to be helpful in the long run. Now I'd like to demonstrate for you a few ways to use the C major scale position with our chromatic notes to improvise some phrases over this 2-5-1. Now, let's talk about the chords we'll be using rhythmically. The first chord is a D minor 7, beginning on the 5th fret of the A string, 7th fret of our D string, barring the 5th fret G, and lastly, the 6th fret of the B string. A nice smooth sounding minor chord. This is our 2 chord in the progression. Now we'll move on to the 5 chord, which is a G dominant 7. I like to use my thumb on the root note of the 6th string on our 3rd fret. Then you're skipping the A string. You'll be playing the 3rd fret D, 4th fret G, 3rd fret B. That's our G dominant 7, our 5 chord, which is going to be leading in to our 1, which is a C major 7. That's going to begin on the 3rd fret of our A string, 5th fret D string, 4th fret G, 5th fret B string. Once more, D minor 7, that's our 2, G dominant 7, that's our 5, C major 7, that's our 1, the root of our key. So now that we've talked about the chords we'll be using and a good scale to approach a few phrases, I'd like to now talk about arpeggiating over these chords from the root position. So let's start with our D minor 7 arpeggio. It's going to start on the 5th fret of the A string, moving up to the 8th fret A string, then the 7th fret D, and then the 5th fret G. So what an arpeggio is it's just taking the notes of a chord and breaking them up into single notes. It's a great way to highlight changes and to showcase what chord's being played at the moment. Now let's look at our G dominant 7 arpeggio. So that's going to start on the 3rd fret E string. Our next note is the 2nd fret of the A, then 5th fret A, 3rd fret D string. Once more. Now let's look at our C major 7 arpeggio. That's going to start on the 3rd fret of the A string, moving up to the 2nd fret D, 5th fret D string, 4th fret G. So in succession it'll sound like this. Now let's talk about a great concept to use these arpeggios in a different way, and that's by inverting them. Now you may have heard of an inversion with a chord, which is when you take a different interval from that chord and use that as the bass note. This same concept can be used in arpeggios, just starting from a different note of the arpeggio. It gives us a more colorful sound and a different way to play the changes without sticking to these same root note position arpeggios. So let's begin by talking about D minor 7. We'll look again at the root position arpeggio, then first inversion and second inversion. So here we are at our D minor 7, our 2 chord. Let's once again review the root position arpeggio. It starts on the 5th fret A string, moving up to the 8th fret A string, 7th fret D, 5th fret G. It's a nice sound to highlight the main intervals of that chord. Now let's move to our first inversion, which starts from the 3rd interval of our chord, which is right here, the 8th fret of the A string, which is an F. So it's going to go like this. It's going to go 8th fret A string, 7th fret D, 5th fret of the G string, 7th fret G string. Now we're going to move on to our second inversion, which starts with the 5th interval as our root. And that's going to be starting on the 7th fret of the D string, moving up to 5th fret G, 7th fret G, 6th fret B string. Now let's hear what those sound like lining up one after another. I recommend practicing them like this to get in a good routine of being able to play each of them kind of at any moment in the progression. So here we are at the 5 chord. Now let's look at these arpeggios, starting again with our root position. That's going to be 3rd fret E string, 2nd fret A, 5th fret A, 3rd fret D. Now we'll look at our first inversion, starting once again on the 3rd interval from that scale. So that's going to be the 2nd fret of our A string. And we'll move that up to the 5th fret. Now 3rd fret D, 5th fret D. Now we'll look at our second inversion, starting from the 5th interval of the chord. So we'll start on the 5th fret of the A string. We'll work our way up to the 3rd fret of the D, And then we're going to use the open G string, and then the 4th fret of the G. Now let's hear them in succession. Now finally, we've reached our 1 chord, C major. So let's talk about the 3 arpeggios we have to play over that chord. Starting once again with reviewing our first root position arpeggio. We'll start on the 3rd fret of the A string, 2nd fret D, 5th fret D, 4th fret G. Now our first inversion will start with the 3rd of the chord, which is an E, starting right here, and that's going to be on the 2nd fret D string, moving up to the 5th fret, then 4th fret G, 5th fret G. Kind of a mysterious sound. Now we'll move on to the second inversion, which starts with the 5th interval of the chord or scale, and that'll be the 5th fret of our D string, then 4th fret G, 1st fret B string, open E. Which makes a nice chord, I think. Now let's hear them in succession. Lastly, I want to talk about some target notes for each of these chords. These are notes that you can approach with some of our chromatic notes that we talked about earlier, or just through other scale tones, but these are notes you want to make a point of landing on each chord to highlight playing the changes, because that's really what jazz playing is all about, with improvising and soloing and making melodies. So the highlight notes that we're going to want to be approaching are going to be the root, the 3rd, and the 7th of each chord. These are the defining characteristics of each of these chords. So the 3 target notes for our D minor 7th chord are D, F, and C. You can find those notes a lot of different places on the neck. And you just really want to make a point of nailing these notes each time you're playing over that chord. Not every time, but enough to accentuate the changes here. And so the 3 target notes for our G dominant chord are G, B, and F. Once again, you can find it in multiple places on the neck, and you can use them in multiple different variations, but you want to make a point of, sliding to these notes, approaching them chromatically, just to really, highlight the changes of the chord. You want to be able to hear the chord changes without a backing track, which is something I really suggest practicing with and without the backing track. So our highlight notes or target notes for C major are going to be C, E, and B. So I'd just like to thank all of you for watching this video. I had a lot of fun filming it, and I hope these introductory tactics to tackling a 2-5-1 are helpful for you. Please leave a comment, subscribe, and like the video if you enjoyed it. If you found it helpful, please share it with a friend. The backing track I used for this video was made by a channel on YouTube called Backing Tracks, and it's called 2-5-1 in C major. I'll leave a link to that in the video description. I recommend you use that or other backing tracks for your practice to really apply these concepts to a real life kind of scenario, so you can hear these changes, practice them, and make a point of hitting those target notes, approach them with chromatic notes, and I really think you should practice those inversions of the arpeggios to give your changes playing a little bit more color and dynamic. Thank you so much for watching. Please enjoy my future videos. Thank you.